Botswana Thinking Law podcast, episode 2.
Yeah.
We're back at it. Kibida Carlos.
Bonolo.
And Bonola is our resident lawyer, our law expert.
Don't call me an expert, please.
Bonola and Kava Tawatani flowers. It's out. When you force the flowers. It's out. We're with our legal expert, Bonolo, who is also the founder and director of Botswana Thinking Law. Thank you for the work you do, man.
Thank you.
This podcast is it's interesting because it's starting, so we haven't seen the impact yet.
Yeah.
But trust and believe, it's going to do something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I hope so.
Yeah.
Because the key is to spread legal information without having people break the bank, and for people to stop fearing lawyers. We're such good people. It's really lawyer. They're fantastic. So let's say the lawyer disasabating Carlos and anyone who's listening. How nteleza. Kana ko panala na go ngobontare. Hey, we tsore ke na le seemonyana. Then ho honen now ka we're bad people, but what we do is almost an art form. In that you can't just give me a snippet. Right?
Got you.
We have to sit down. You tell me your issues. I ask you questions because no, the reason why is because Lino
Yes.
Lawyers are exactly like that. Kganyo nang le yone ke ye mme ha o nna o ntse o re botsana dipotswana mpolelela kgang ya gago ebe ko gore kere o ka tswa o bona mathata a le gale mme ko mathata a leng teng tota ke ha. Yes.
Okay. So that's why you guys will give me an invoice before we even start.
It's not even like that.
No, but I completely understand it. Actually, I've never actually thought about it that way. I've always thought the reason why you guys don't like that is because now people are asking you to do your job for free.
Well, there is that.
Yeah.
But predominantly, ke yona kgang ya gore ga o ka kwa nthomella molaetsa hello bonthare hey o itse gore motho gana ka ngwana. Right? O batla gore ke gore ke re o bo re ke dire yang Bonolo. Ta officing re buisana
ke o invoice this is my life, this is my job, this is what I do. Anyway, how's your week?
My week has been good.
Okay.
Busy.
Okay.
Which is always a good thing.
100%.
And yours?
It was all right. Busy. Work is crazy, man. First quarter is normally not busy, but this time around, I guess because the business is growing.
Yeah.
Why else my like?
Because I want us to talk about your business, right?
Okay.
We're always talking about what I do and the law. So tell us about the business.
Yeah.
Because we've done a few collaborations together.
Yes. My business is called CKM Textiles.
Yeah.
I'm in the textile industry, as the name says. We make clothes. We manufacture clothes.
Yes.
Here's the thing. The idea is for us to grow into like one of the biggest manufacturers of clothes in Africa.
Oh.
But we're starting very small, logically. So we started with just one product offering right now, which is hats. So right now we make hats of just different kinds, like bucket hats, safari hats, cricket hats, school hats, that sort of whatever. If it goes on the head and it's some sort of hat and it uses some sort of cotton fabric, we can probably figure it out for you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Then you know what? We need to do another collaboration for the employment law seminar that's coming up in April.
Yes.
To motivate people to
register,
come through and listen, get some hats and learn about employment law and things of that nature.
No, definitely. We definitely can do that. Sorry, you logo last week. Maybe the logo is refreshed, but it's a different one. It's not the one that I had the last time, but but definitely.
Yeah.
So, which brings us to today's topic.
Yes.
Because as the business grows, honestly, we've been extremely blessed. We thought it was going to take a bit of time for us to get to where we are. But, in the almost 2 years that we've been open, the business has grown really well to a point where now we're expanding and we're looking for more employees. We had more employees in December. Now we're looking to hire more. And, as the business grows, obviously human capital is a very important element of that. And hence today's topic.
Yeah.
Employment. I would like for us to talk about employment. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
But before we get there, to go and run your business, Carlos.
100%. 100%. And I still, to this day, I still get people saying, like, what happened? What happened with the radio thing? Look, I went back on radio because radio is really where I started my working life. I started going on FM back in 2008, 2009. I was there for 5 years, and then I got off radio for about 6-7 years. And the thing about creative spaces, once you've been inside it, it's very difficult for you to just let go and leave, And the idea when I left Yaron, I was like, okay, I wanna create something of my own, and then once that thing holds, I can now go back to radio and do the radio thing.
Yeah.
So I did that. I partnered with someone in something, and then I went back to radio. Okay, no, I'm secure.
Yeah.
And then as partnerships go, that partnership fell apart, and so now I had to go off on my own for real and start up from scratch because I'm the kind of guy who's just like, I know my capabilities. If something's not working out with somebody else, I'm just like, you know what? It's sharp. Let me just go off on my own instead of fighting and what. Let me just go off on my own and just start up my own thing. So I started the thing, and I thought I could run a startup company while, doing a daily radio show.
Yeah.
And it just didn't work. It was just too much, And I had to prioritize the business. And but I still do stand-ins on radio. Speaking of our time on radio together, which was very brief. It was like, 5-6 months?
Yeah. I like how 5-6 months is brief in your mind. I'm like, I've known Carlos for ages now.
Someone hit me up and they were really happy, we're doing the podcast.
Yeah.
She randomly just came across it and was just like, yo, so you guys are doing this thing now? Oh, yeah. I get you guys have been on my case about these things. Whatever the case is,
Yeah.
So this is a great platform, man. I'm really happy we're doing this.
Yeah. No, yeah. I'm sure it will, because I think that we get along really well.
Yeah.
And that comes through even in the mic and stuff like that. And so I think, sometimes when you're giving Batu information, it is always enjoyable when the people that are discussing what they're discussing have that what's the word? Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Okay. Oh, is that why? Because after we stopped
I don't know. So we were saying we're talking about employment law today.
Employment law.
Yes.
Okay, so we're talking employment law. We work in contract, about severance, dismissal, etc.
Yes.
Where does all of this fall under?
Okay. So Momolao Botswana, two main categories of employees, right?
Okay. Yeah.
You have your private sector employee, and then you have your public sector employee.
Okay.
Now, in the private sector, the law that we look at when we talk employment is the Employment Act. In the public sector, the law, there are actually different things that we look at. There's the Public Service Act, there are portions of the Employment Act, you have your BDF Act, Police Act, Botswana Prisons Officers Act, and then you have your, are they called standing orders? Something like that. So in relation to the public service, there's so many other things that you look at aside from just one specific act.
Okay.
Whereas in employment in the private sector, like I said, it's the Employment Act. And then when there are disputes, that's when other things arise. Or issues that the union.
Yes,
so when it comes to unions, you have the Trade Unions and Employers Organizations Act. You have the Trade Disputes Act, and then you have regulations to some of these acts. So you can see how in the private sector, the act that's the public sector, because some of these, like your trade unions and employers organizations, the Trade Disputes Act, also apply the public sector.
Why is it that way?
I think it's because you find there's specific things that are very, very particular to people that work in the civil service, right? So, for example, you might find soldiers, because of the nature of the work that they do, there are specific things that will apply to them. Then bonolo iberekela hela in the private sector. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So this conversation, usually when it's had, it's always focusing on employees.
Yes.
Right? But our government has been talking about diversifying the economy, entrepreneurship, people starting up businesses. So a bunch of people have started up businesses and they're employers. Does this conversation apply to them as well?
Yes. So firstly, we need to clarify how the discussion we're having is in relation to the private sector, not the public sector, right?
Okay.
And then, yes, it applies to both employers and employees. And you know, a lot of people don't consider themselves employers when they actually are. So you find someone will have right? Or will have like a person, the gardener, for example. Yes, that actually makes the person an employer. Yes. The problem is when people then don't regard themselves as employers, they then don't follow the Employment Act in relation to those people that work for them. Yes.
Job description.
I get it. It's not just job description. Severance. Leave days. Notice things of that nature. Leave. Yes. People don't actually tend, especially people tend not to think of them as employees in that sense. But in a certain way as employees and get certain rights and duties and benefits that they don't give to their helpers.
Okay, that's before.
Oh yes.
Okay, so I assume there's some sort of contract that needs to happen for employment to take place, right?
Yes.
And the little that I know about contracts is that there should be some sort of offer and somebody has to accept it or whatever the case is. What does an employment offer look like? Like how does it all start until we get to it being a contract? I guess maybe a simpler way to ask this question would be, what does the law consider employment or employment contract?
Okay. I think the thing that a lot of people get confused about is people assume that for an employment contract to exist, it has to be in a writing. It doesn't. An employment contract can be verbal, right? And for an employment contract to exist, there has to be an individual who we will call the employer and another individual who is the employee, where one offers their service and the other accepts for a certain amount of money to be paid on certain terms. And there's a certain level of control in relation to the work that will be undertaken by this person who will be the employee. Now, there are different types of contracts of employment in that you can have a contract of employment for a fixed period.
Okay.
Right. So a contract of employment could be for a year, right? Meaning when that year comes to an end, the contract comes to an end. It can be an employment contract for a specific thing. Maybe I want to hire somebody to build for me, right? I'm a contractor and I employ someone to build for me. And the contract specifies what they are going to be there for purposes of building a house at place X.
Yeah.
Once that house is complete, everything they're entitled to, their salary, their wages, their severance, then, their salary and so on, then the contract comes to an end. And that's when severance and all those things come into play. Yes.
Okay, so what of an instance where you're talking about contracts could either be written or verbal?
Yes.
Let's say, I'll use your example of a year-long contract, right? Okay, I'm employed for a year, we sign a contract and it's written.
Yes.
And then once maybe or 2 months, mohiri a ba re, bona Carlos, go santse gona le dunyana tse di saletseng ga morago. It's going to take an extra month outside of the written contract.
Yes.
All right, so outside the written contract,
extra month or two.
And then nothing is done in writing. We just and then we do the work and whatever the case is.
Yes.
What's that?
It's still an employment contract.
It's still an employment contract. It's still...
So it would still be for a limited amount of time. It can be interpreted in two ways, right? It could be an extension of the original contract to say instead of 12 months, it is 14 months. Or it could be a termination of the first 12 months and then you enter into a new contract for those 2 months. The problem with that is you never actually have this discussion. Or you have this discussion after the 12th month or then you work the extra 2 months. Right? It then becomes very difficult to prove you extended the contract for an additional 2 months rather than entering into a completely new contract for an indefinite period of time. Because that's another type of contract. More Botswana permanent and pensionable, right? Even though sometimes there's no pension involved, right? And that is a contract of employment for an indefinite period of time, and it's not for a specific type of work, right? Or a specific work. So, I'm hiring person Y, ele secretary. Probation, and then how it's a probation, then you're confirmed. And the way this contract doesn't say yes.
Yeah, because able talk by your nail, you find people always find themselves in that situation.
Yes.
And you're right. Sometimes you don't even discuss it. You just assume no, so let me just work an extra month.
Yes.
Every day, so they will pay me.
Yes.
And then at the end, it's like, no, we hired you to do the specific work.
Yes.
We're not going to decide to add an extra month.
Yes.
And then now it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
But then
you see, these extra months, they've been paying you. Right? So if you were not continuing the work, what were they paying you for? Right? So it's always a weird situation. And that's the reason why we tell people to come for a consultation.
Yes. Because there's that also as well. We've spoken about this before, you and I, where you've explained to me sometimes just the simple fact that this person is coming to work and doing some work.
Yes, and you're paying them.
That's employment contract.
Yes.
Even without saying, what, just those actions.
Yes.
Okay. For further information, you can contact
your lawyer. Exactly. And I always say to people, when I say contact your lawyer, I'm not saying call the Osililo attorneys, right?
Yes.
I'm saying get legal assistance. The key is for people to not freestyle. Because freestyle because what you then see happening, and I saw someone freestyle right? Sometimes you find it's easier to get a lawyer at the beginning for certain controls in place than it is for us to fix. Fixing tends to cost a hell of a lot of money.
Yes. Prevention better than cure.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll have some examples, real life examples here and there, whatever the case is. But there's just some, I guess, buzzwords that I want us to go through in terms of employment. I get.
Yes.
Okay, sharp. you are employed.
Yes.
And then there's the issue of probation.
Yes.
Yes.
Before we get to probation,
yeah.
So in employment law, you find we have contracts. When you start discussing employment, you look at the discussion of a contract for service and a contract of service, right? Because one is employment and the other is not.
Okay.
Right? And I'll give you an example. How you are hired as a lawyer by your law firm. Your practicing certificate is under the name of the law firm. You get paid a salary every month. The employer gets to control your hours of work, the type of work you do, and so on. You're an employee. But there's certain instances where a person can be a consultant. And the most typical example of these consultants are insurance agents. Right? Ba ileng gore gongwe motho ta ba tsamaya a ya rekisa insurance a ba duelwa ka commission, and they are able to take up other types of employment or other things to generate money, and the control that the person or Bahirilling has over them is quite limited. So you can find instances where people think they're employees, but they're actually independent contractors. However, I have found there are situations where people have entered into contracts, and in the contracts, they're said to be consultants. All right? And I'm saying this in air quotes. But when you actually look at the contract, the way the contract reads, you see this person is an employee. And the reason why some organizations want to do that is to run away from the minimum requirements that are in the Employment Act.
So rightfully yours.
Exactly. So I usually say to people, look, if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck,
chances are
it is a duck. So you can call it a really large yellow pigeon. But if it's a duck, it's a duck.
It's a duck.
Yes.
Yeah, because hey man, we sort of with unemployment issues, that's the thing. Like, you are in there, you are stressing, you don't have a job. These guys have given you an opportunity. They're the first ones to call you in like a year or so. And they say, when can you start? And you're like, as soon as possible. They say, oh, can you start tomorrow? Or yes, I can start tomorrow. Okay, am I hella? And then the human resource person goes and prints a contract, then puts it in front of you and says, yeah, please sign here for you to start tomorrow.
Yes.
We know that you're not supposed to sign anything without reading.
Exactly.
But people find themselves in those situations where they just sign because, hey, I just want to get started tomorrow. Or you're thinking, if I don't sign this thing now, they're going to give it to somebody else in Kije.
Yeah.
What do we say to people in those cases?
Look, I don't want to say this in a way that makes it seem as if Kenyanya has a batho ba bangwe, right?
Yeah.
But if you want to go into a certain organization, without taking an opportunity to give you a copy of the contract, or to even say to you, okay, then you could find there's a problem with that organization. Before you sign it.
Yeah.
Secondly, it could also be problematic for that particular organization at a later date, because consensus at Edom, where effectively our minds have to meet, right?
Okay.
And in order for our minds to meet, so if you're just going to have me sign something, have our minds met. One person why it's saying, but I don't know what I'm signing. But a lot of times,
yeah, man, I was talking to a security guard in our building, man. It was really sad. He was talking about how he wanted to leave his job, and only when he wanted to leave, he finds out he has to serve notice at 3 months.
Yes.
And it's something that he signed, and he's just like, there's nothing I can do. I have to stick around.
Yes.
Otherwise, I have to pay these people, and I don't have the money to pay them.
And that's the sad thing, with notice that people tend not to pay attention to. You either serve the notice or you pay.
Okay.
Probation.
Now probation. Now you are employed, you are in there, we're giving you 6 months probation. What does that mean?
Okay, so probation has to take place, I won't say before you are employed, but it's almost at the same time, right?
Okay.
By that I mean, by the time you start your employment or you sign your contract of employment, if it's written, then you have to be told your probation period. So by the time o dumela gore nya ke a go bereka ko boketekete, o tshwanetse go bo itse gore go na le probation.
Okay.
Right? So there's a limitation in the period or duration ya probation. So unskilled employees give 3 months and skilled employees get 12 months.
Okay.
What this means is that the reason for probation is for the employer to see whether the employee understands the work, is able to do it properly, and whether they fit in to the organization. I could be very good at what I'm doing, but if I have terrible interpersonal skills, then it could damage morale wa ko tirong, right? And it also is the same thing for the employee. The employee gets to see the work environment, gets to see whether they fit into the organization or not, right? So that's the purpose of probation.
Okay.
So probation for unskilled employees get 3 months. What that means, it can be a full 3 months before you sign the contract or you enter into the contract. For probation get 3 months. Or you can start off probation 1 month, and then before that 1 month maybe extend you by another 2 months or another 1 month and so on. But cumulatively, probation and unskilled employee cannot, in terms of the law, be longer than 3 months.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I love that you mentioned the employee side, because I always mention that to people that I hire. You're going on probation for however long, but you must understand also, or as much as the company is putting you on probation, I know you must put the company on probation.
Yes.
After that period, and you see, whatever the case is, and you can decide it doesn't work.
Yes.
So, even after you've agreed with the company or whatever, as an employee, after probation, you can decide, this is not for me, it doesn't work for me.
Yes.
Only the company can decide to say it doesn't work.
So, the probation thing, the decision of it doesn't work has to take place before probation right?
Okay.
Otherwise, from an employer perspective, whether skilled or unskilled, with a certain probation period, probation you have confirmed my employment. Automatic. So probation has to be extended before or the employment contract has to be terminated before probation otherwise get confirmation. So probation works best for employers in the sense that how terminate an employee during probation. As an employer, you can just say, we've decided not to confirm you, right? And give no reasons. As soon as you give reasons, right?
Okay, how so?
In the sense that in employment law, if you are going to terminate an employee, and this is in line with the industrial court, which is where most employment matters go, you have to prove there's a good reason why you let the employee go, which is substantive fairness, and then you have to show you followed the right procedure for letting this employee go, which is the procedural fairness. So during probation is where there's an exception to this. You don't have to show this. You just say, we've decided not to keep you on.
And that's it.
And that's it. Notice.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
But you are noticing, but
you don't have to give a reason.
You don't have to give a reason why you are terminating the employee. But if today probation I may have then you've automatically confirmed me as an employee.
Yeah.
Meaning, if you're going to be letting me go, especially if the matter is going to end up at the industrial court, then you have to make sure these two things are satisfied. Yes.
Okay. How do we get probation? There's always a bit of confusion with probation and internship.
Yes.
So the difference is very clear. Internship is one thing, probation is another thing.
Yes.
Under probation, what can or what can't I do, or the company, like, because as an intern, there's certain things that you can't be expected to do because I can go on outside and we do that or whatever the case is, right? More probation, you want to more thing. Yeah, I'm not more probation. Can I like something more probation? Is it? My man, you're hired. It's time for you to do the work.
Hey, you have to do the work. I can no probationing.
Yeah.
Decide, are you a good fit for the organization? Yes.
So you can't come as an employee on probation and say, hey, but it's more probation. You're a fully employed individual.
But you're a fully employed individual. It's just that you haven't been confirmed, right?
Okay.
And imagine this. You've hired me for a lawyer, right?
Yeah.
And probation, I make it 4 months,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And during those 4 months, I get just letters of demand after confirm I get court. You know what I mean? And make a super hacky exactly.
Okay, so it's this conversation is this topic is very layered, but we're gonna try and run through it as much as possible.
Yeah.
Okay, sharp. So probation is done now, and as the employee, I've decided I'm sticking around. The company has decided they're keeping me around.
Yes.
And organization here. And then there's certain things that are saying to me, I don't want to leave. And I've raised them in the company, but no one is doing anything about it. You know, I've gone through the channels, some organization. Is there anywhere I can go to? You know, when we are labor, processes in there. You know, the industrial court, there's always issues on it about termination. But while I'm still employed in the company, I still want to be employed by this organization. Is there anywhere I can go? Organization in your yes.
As an employee, HR is not your friend. Human resources, a company, is not your friend.
Yes, ma'am.
They are employees just like you, and they are there to protect the interests of the employer. Right?
Yeah.
The policy this issue, HR and so on. But as long as HR, any employee, that organization, there will always be a level of bias towards the employer.
The organization,
yes. With that being said, how communicate HR or your superiors about a grievance? Make sure it is in writing.
Oh, okay.
And this is done to protect you in the sense you complain about something legitimate, right? But because you complain, they then decide to let you go. That is retaliation, which is not allowed in terms of the law.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And the other thing, people can actually go to labor because there are times when in terms of the employment laws tsa Botswana. So go botoka gore batho ba ye go labor ba ye go botsa gape labor ga go ihela ha motho a senyegetse ke tiro kana a tlogetse tiro. And that's one of the reasons why labor deals with mediation. Labor is not a decision-making body.
Okay.
Labor says le ka mo se dira ga nka ke ka re go tseraganya mme go re retsa khanye tang go yone gore e khone gore batho ba ba dumalane mo tharabollong e ka tswana. Right? So they mediate a matter. And if the mediation fails, that's when you go to the industrial court.
Oh, yes. Okay. Okay. So labor.
However, there are certain matters that don't fall within the avenue industrial court. and they could go to arbitration and things of that nature.
But the way this country is so small, man. Like, I think people are just terrified of being victimized. You know, you go to the thing and then, you said it's retaliation.
Yes. And that's the reason why the law, how about that, especially, and I keep emphasizing the industrial court, right?
Yeah.
Industrial court, how ya thing, o kubile motho mo tirong kana motho a kubile mo tirong, o tshwanetse go supa gore go ne go na le lebaka le le lolameng ka ga molaong la gore ke eng mo ntshitse mo tirong, ebile le tsamaiso e o e setseng morago ke yone e leng gore e ne e siame. So when you get to the industrial court, the burden is on the employer. The employee just needs to prove that they were let go. Yes. And then the employer has the burden to prove yes.
Okay.
And the reason I keep emphasizing the industrial court is because the rules are very different when it comes to the high court.
Okay.
Right? In the sense that the industrial court is a court of equity, whereas the high court is a court of law. So the way they look at contracts of employment is different.
Okay.
I'll give you an example. If a written contract of employment says an employee can be terminated by being given 1 month's notice, right? If we get to the high court and the employer shows, notice 1 month, I didn't give reasons, that would be a proper way of having let go of an employee at the high court, because that's what the contract says. But at the industrial court, even if the contract says you give the employee 1 month's notice, you still have to satisfy the substantive and procedural fairness part of them, right?
Okay.
Number one. Number two, if at the high court you have maybe a contract dealing fixed term for 12 months, and it is shown wholly your termination was not proper for whatever reason, then you can claim the unexpired portion of your contract. Let's say you've just been there for 2 months, and then you get to court, you can actually claim for the unexpired 10 months. High court. Or industrial court, there could be limitations or certain elements that come to play. Allow 3 months, 6 months, and so on. I'm not saying you cannot be given the 10 months, but there is a higher chance of being given more compensation at the high court, especially in fixed term contracts, depending on the circumstances.
Let's start at the industrial court, you know.
The industrial court is actually more fair towards employees.
It sounds like it. That's what it sounds like. Okay. See, it's brand new information to me. Now I know. And we got leave. You said you mentioned claiming in there, and then I remember how I claim the leave days. Please, there's just so much that I want to ask there. Let's just start with, what are leave days? How many leave days do I have when I'm working in the private sector? How does,
So there are 2 types of leave in terms of our law, right?
Okay. Yep.
And this is employment law. You have your sick leave and you have your annual leave.
Okay.
Right? So your sick leave, where you have a doctor's sick note and so on.
Yeah.
And sick leave is about 20 days in any given year.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And then annual leave is 1.25 days for every month that you work. So, let's say February 2025. You start off with the full 20 days sick leave, and then you only earn your annual leave at the rate of 1.25 days for every month. So, how February, you're only going to get your 1.25 days at the end of February. You would have earned it.
Okay.
All of this 1.25s, I think, adds up to about 15 days per year.
Yeah.
The other thing about these why we specify these days is because they're paid for. Meaning, for how young then you get a week off. How deduct from your salary.
Yes.
Right? Same thing with annual leave. There is no money deducted from your salary. However, exhaustile sick leave, we exhaustile annual leave, or you have an emergency or and stuff, then once authorized, it becomes unpaid leave. Your employer deducts from your salary. Yes.
Can you deduct my job at my job at my salary? That's not legal.
No, I get it. The thing is, you're being paid. I get it.
Give us the invoice. Yeah, I have the invoice.
You're being paid because you're working, right?
Yeah.
And so the reason why sick leave le annual leave it is money. It is there are days as if you were still working, right? But if you don't go to work, right?
Yeah.
And then the employer can say, okay, instead of the 22 days every month that this person is supposed to be working, depending on how many days a week you work, this person actually worked 19. So I'm going to pay them for 19 days. Yes.
And that's legal?
That's legal.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I think actually, now that I think about it, I think the deduction of salary thing had to do with misconduct in the company, or not doing something you're supposed to be doing in the company. And it's not hey, only a few companies is once I say it's gonna seem like I'm attacking some, but it's not any of the radio stations I've worked for.
Oh, I see.
Hey, but
how many radio stations have you worked for again?
I've worked for two. I've worked for two, and it's neither one of them that does this. All right. But I've heard of instances where in a radio station, for example, there's during ad break, there's live reads. Live reads are where you actually read the ad. You say, ad Bonolo, Slola attorneys, this is what we do. And as the radio presenter, you decide, I'm just not going to read this thing. I'm going to skip it. Or even just not play an ad. It will go live Is that legal?
I'm going to give you the answer that I give people by Longkore. Bakopanale, a lawyer must I have this situation.
Yes, just a generic
and I say this because, you know, when you do something or fail to do something that is not in line with your contract of employment, then your employer can take disciplinary action against you.
Yes.
Disciplinary action Arab, right? And you respond, and based on the response, they can then decide for, okay, we are going to, the outcome is that right?
Yeah.
As discipline.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So I always am very weary of giving a general overview without fully understanding or was there some process that was followed for the ad, and then the outcome of the disciplinary process again a bit of your salary. You get me?
Yes. And again, none of the companies that had employed me before have ever taken anybody's mind.
And also it depends on whether or not these people were employees. Because, you know, sometimes people that work for radio stations aren't necessarily employees.
100%.
I use the word work loosely.
Yeah,
they could be independent contractors.
Freelancers and that sort of thing.
Exactly.
Okay. Bonolo, we've been talking for close to an hour.
We have? Hey,
my information that I talk, so we shall continue. What do you guys come across a lot when it comes to the Khansa employment? You know, whether it's the employer who's looking for your services or employee looking for your service mo Botswana ke dikgang di fetse leng gore di a tshwenya thata
dikgang tse di tshwenyang thata ke gore batho ga ba itse gore severance e calculate-iwa yang.
Yes.
Number one.
Yes.
Number two, batho ga ba itse gore ha o le mmereki o kgona gore o botswa mo tirong and still sue your employer for unlawful dismissal. Right? And I'll give you an example. There's a word for it. What do you use? Constructive dismissal, yes. In the sense that the employer makes the work environment so toxic that you had no choice but to quit. Who pushes it out. And in that particular instance, you are allowed to actually go to court. And if you have the necessary evidence to show, you know what, I was constructively dismissed from work. I didn't want to leave, but the work environment was so toxic, I was forced to leave.
Yes.
Collect the
evidence.
Your complaint to HR.
Supervisor of yours.
Yes.
Record that.
Exactly.
Keep that aside.
Exactly.
Keep that aside. Keep that aside. And then when you come and say, okay, that's interesting. So you can actually say, no, they didn't explicitly fire me.
Yes.
I'm the one who left.
Yes.
But I left because I didn't have a choice.
Yes.
Hey. But now you still have to follow the process. Actually. You still have to serve your notice. You still have to do all those things that you need to.
Yes.
Okay.
But you have to have evidence. But in all things, Momolao, you have to have evidence for the position that you're taking.
Okay. Yeah. Just quickly before we wrap up the leave part of this conversation. Especially for companies in India. Actually, I've discovered even happens in big companies. This thing. Yeah. Well, there's these instances where mutota bari atatho ale mo officing abari boss man ke kopa go tabogela ha clinicing hale ka go tsa ngwana kana ke ha sekolong sa ngwana hale or whatever the case is, you know, and then ka moso gape o mongwe ke kopa go riana. And then you find that it's never really an issue during while all of that is happening. It's only when there's an issue go hello go aga di kgantsone tsa bo severance kana go aga di kgantsa bo dituelo, and then the employer will say nya me nna kana motho o ne gona re santse re theogetse hala batsa a tsama ang kopa gore wa tsama ka bo 2 motshegara ba itse ruri asa boy until the following day, and that's not recorded as leave or anything like that. What can we say about those instances?
Firstly, my question would be, do they have proof of that? Right? Number one. Number two, it's a year later. If it was an issue of misconduct, because remember, absence from work without leave is misconduct.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So issue of misconduct, and this is what you're having me answer to now. Lindsay Lemetse, what have you been waiting for? If it was an issue, I guess you would have told me then.
Yes.
But why is it that now I asked you and you said yes. Let's say no one is denying. I asked you, you said yes.
Yeah.
But then you decided for that. So why is it coming up as an issue now?
So to protect ourselves against these sort of things, as the employee, try and avoid that as much as possible.
Try and avoid that as much as possible. Or if there's a culture office, make it formal, right?
Yes.
In writing, okay, I'll be back at this time and so on.
I remember you saying this to me as well about generally everything in the office that there's favors that the employee will do for the employer, there's favors that the employer will do for the employee. Personal issues and an extra 30 minutes, 45 minutes,
exactly.
And then you don't claim that as overtime. And I remember you saying to me, yeah, all of that is great and well when things are good.
Yes.
You know, you have to try and find a way to make that as formal as possible.
You should come with receipts.
Okay. Let's get to now it's not working out and somebody wants to leave. the khanza notice, the khanza about termination, the khanza about severance. I don't know where you even want us to start with that.
Okay, so let's take it from the standpoint, the employee.
Okay.
Unlike the employer who has to satisfy these two requirements, substantive and procedural fairness, an employee, I'm starting my notice. Because a lot of times when an employee writes and says, I'm terminating my employment with immediate effect, people assume what it means, at least from my understanding, is that from this time when I give you the letter, notice starts running. Yes, not at some later date, right? And notice what you can do as an employee is you can pay instead of serving the notice.
Okay.
Or you can serve the notice. So you find different periods that notice.
Okay, so you pay what? You pay
in lieu of notice. So if your notice is 1 month, you can pay that 1 month.
So your salary for that month.
Yes.
Yeah.
If your notice is 3 months, you can pay those 3 months. Or your employer can say, no, at least sever notice 1 month and then you'll pay me the 2 months or whatever. Yes.
So has more employer recurring it has to be your salary, what they were paying.
Yes.
Okay.
Based on the number of months that you are supposed to serve notice. Yes.
So as the employee, you don't have to give reasons. You can just say,
yes.
Oh.
You don't have to give reasons.
Yeah, but I agree. Okay, now I'm going back in my mind. I'm thinking every time I've quit, because I've never been fired. Actually, I've been fired once. I've been fired once, and I was fired by your friend.
Who was my friend?
My older brother. That's the only company I've been
Wait,
fired
when
for.
is this? Let's check the scripture.
So now I think every time I left the job, I'd always write a whole letter, but it's because I really appreciate what they've done for me. And so I guess that's when you can lay out, no, I'm going to school, or I'm doing this, or I'm going to run a business, or whatever the case is.
Wait, is that the reason why every time I met people when we stopped doing our show, they were like, hey, Ruta Carlos, we le mahatsi. Okay.
In this day of social media, how do I go to Mahatsi? I'm here in Gabs. Anyway, okay. So that's notice. And then from the employer side.
From the employer side, probation, right? If you are sure your employee will go to the High Court and complain about unfair dismissal, then you can give them notice in terms of the contract of employment. But because you are never sure, you have to ensure there are these two things, substantive fairness, being the reason you're letting them go is valid in law, and procedural fairness, the steps you took to let them go or to dismiss them were also in line with the law.
Let's talk about that one, because a lot of people don't understand that, procedure is very important. So let's say the company policy is how a hearing or whatever the case is, and then maybe a second hearing, or how you had a warning letter, maybe 2 warning letters or whatever the case is, and then they dismiss you on the 3rd one. But sometimes you find the boss is upset, you've done a monumental screw up in the company, and then the guys are just like, man, you've cost us so much money, you are just a stressful person. Don't ever come back.
Yes. And a lot of times batho ba lebella summary dismissal in that way. Right? Batho ba tsaela gore ha go te summary dismissal go tewa gore ha bonolo a tsena mo di officing a thathaikela ha ba le ana ba uta bonolo ang kha bojalo ba re bonolo immediately you're fired. Right? They think that's what summary dismissal is all about. But it's not. Summary dismissal still has to satisfy these elements, right? Being the reason for the dismissal and the procedure. And procedure ya teng e bua gore o tshwantse go ntebisa molato gore ke arabe right? Maybe you think I'm drunk, but what actually happened, allergics, right? And then there's some sort of reaction in my stomach. Allergics are so I and because of the reaction in my stomach, I smell like I've been drinking alcohol, right? And that's one of the reasons why the procedure is necessary, because there could be a legitimate explanation for why something took place, right? But if I am found guilty of this serious misconduct, that's when, after following the substantive and procedural aspect, you then summarily dismiss me. Summary dismissal simply means, or you let me go without giving me notice. That's what it means. And here, giving notice could be sever notice, or we're going to pay you in lieu of notice. It is not about you're fired. No. There has to be a good reason for letting me go. There has to be a proper process, even in summary dismissal.
Yeah, gents, go out there, get your money. Because I know there's a bunch of guys, especially like guys who work in like low-level jobs for security guard. Yeah, and I know guys just literally just get fired overnight.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I guess then not that it's an officing late
because yes, what's any more officing lately, but why? Is it because you woke up late? Is it because you accident? You see, and that's the reason why procedure molato dirileng ke o araba o bo kgona gore nyamme kana ke ne ke dule ko lapeng nako ya malatsi otlhe, mme ha re tsana ko bolebelebe koloi ya rona be e phantšhe ebe dikombi di nna di re heta hela ditetse ke sone se ke leng late.
Okay. I feel like there's so much more that we can cover here.
Maybe we need to do a part 2 on employment law.
No, we definitely do.
In fact, we're not doing a part 2 on employment law.
Yes.
People need to come to the employment law seminar. That is 26th April 2025.
Okay.
Yes.
We'll get to the seminar and how to register for the seminar, etc., right? I want to pass by this issue real quick because it's something that I saw this week online or social media where temporary teachers, I don't know if that's a union association or what the case is, but it's temporary teachers and unemployed teachers by Kgobokanse. And then they took a petition to the Minister of Labor and Home Affairs. They have some conditions in there. Now, what I want to speak to specifically about, with a bit worried or I might upset people, but we're just having a conversation, right?
This is not legal advice.
It's not legal advice. Yes. We're just having a conversation. One of the conditions in there, they were saying 80% of the teachers in private schools should be Botswana. This is a conversation that's been going on for years. A lot of the private schools hire foreign nationals. For whatever reason, they hire foreign nationals. So these guys are saying, no, 80% about number one. And the other condition they were saying, any work permits that have been granted to foreign nationals and suspend you. Cancel and then the ones that are in process now, they must be suspended. Nothing should be done as far as that's concerned. Now I'm thinking to myself, okay, sharp. I understand, man, like there's enough shortage of teachers, especially in government schools. There's just a mess as far as the teacher industry in Botswana goes. But now I'm thinking to myself, I'm a foreign national, I'm sitting here and I'm employed at the school and I see something like this and and so now I'm worried. I'm thinking to myself, oh man, what does this mean for me? What do you say to someone who's sitting at home and worried, a foreign national, like, yo, does this mean I'm going to lose my job? Is it even legal for me to lose my job? I have a contract with the school. It's a 5-year contract. I'm only 2 years in. And now these guys are saying these things. So if the law changes, what does that mean for my contract?
Yeah. Unfortunately, that discussion is not a discussion for employer-employee contracts, right? It's a discussion now of whether or not the government can revoke the work permit. Like if the work permit is 10 years, can they revoke it also to 2 years just because certain people demand it, right? Especially how Hadira said. And I guess it for me it's a hey, well, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a deeper discussion because now I'm getting into other territories.
Yeah, I can see your mind is just...
Yes, I was actually thinking about this for, you're saying the government seems to be listening to Botswana and they seem to be moving quite fast.
Yeah.
But sometimes when you move quite fast, you might find you then trip over yourself
100%.
when you are not supposed to be. And you then find a situation, you make mistakes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think as a country that is governed by the proper rule of law.
Yeah.
And I use proper here deliberately because we know there are instances where the law can be there, but the law is not just.
100%.
If a person has been given a work permit and they haven't done anything wrong in order to violate the conditions of the work permit, what would be the reasons for withdrawing it? You know what I mean? So that's just a personal commentary.
Yeah.
But while I understand the issue, unemployment and the plight, the temporary teachers, it is not something that can be done just like that without the government then opening itself up to severe litigation, right?
Yeah.
Because imagine I have a work permit here 10 years,
yeah.
and maybe then I have a corresponding contract of employment, and then government decides to withdraw my work permit. He did all of these things because of this permit that came from government. I haven't violated the conditions of that permit. Then I surely should be allowed to sue government because they've acted in such an unreasonable way that now I find myself in dire straits. So sometimes when we want to, right?
Yeah.
We want action fast, but we don't then look at the ripple effect of that action, right? Exactly. Right now, the government is saying we have no money.
Yeah.
So can they afford to actually open up such a huge suit liability?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tricky, man. Okay, let's...
I hope Kiara be like a sakatupe, toes and stuff like that. Yeah.
Even now when I thought about the question, I was like, I need to ask this because, people are, they're wondering what's going on, let's close it off with severance. Hey, severance. I've calculated severance a few times myself.
Yes.
How does it work?
So,
what is severance and how is it calculated?
You have to first determine whether or not Moto is entitled to severance.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And that is because in terms of the law, Hamotwa hiwa pension, hiwi severance. Oh, sorry, hanale pension hiwi severance.
Okay.
Kana hiwa gratuity hiwi severance. It's possible though for an employment contract to say severance, gratuity, pension, but the general rule, you get one of the three.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So then you determine this employee is entitled to severance. The way severance is calculated is for the first 60 months, so 5 years of employment with that employer, you earn 1 day.
Okay.
Yes. So at the end of 5 years, otabo in 60 days, because it's 1 day per month. Right? And at the end of that 60 months, you as an employee can be paid the severance by your employer, unless usabati, then it can be paid at the time your employment comes to an end. Because severance is in 2 instances: when your employment comes to an end, or when you reach the timeline, your 5 years. And then after the first 60 months, which is the first 5 years, then severance becomes 2 days for every month. Yes.
Okay. So if I'm earning 1,000 pula
Mm.
and I'm working for this company, I work for this company for 5 years, and then I want to leave. So they have to pay me 60,000 pula.
If you earn 1,000 pula a day. Yes. I get it. So with severance, Ghana, you have your salary per month.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And then what happens is that your monthly salary is calculated to show you how much you earn per day.
Your daily rate.
Yes, your daily rate. You earn a daily rate for every month that you have worked.
Oh.
Yes. Right?
Okay.
So if you work 1 month, you earn 1 day worth of severance. That's why only 60 days, because you've worked 60 months. And then those 60 days are multiplied by your daily rate. And the daily rate is at the time the severance is paid. So high lower your daily rate give 50 pula when you start working. But get 100 pula at the time severance is then the time any length severance is multiplied by that 100 pula. Yes. And like I said, severance gets paid at the 5-year mark. Now she said the 60 months. Leha o sa tswa mo tirong.
Okay.
Unless only employee o bua gore nya, you will pay me later.
Yeah.
Or severance is paid how kubiwa. Meaning if you get employed for 2 months, uduela severance ya 2 days. Yes.
Yo. Okay. So it's not necessarily after a certain period of time, like after many, many years or whatever the case is. Literally, if you've worked 6 months, you're entitled to Obokubiwa.
Yes.
You're entitled
but
to
how
severance,
you have to wait for the 5 years. Yes.
Okay. So how then do I know for a organization e bereka ka severance a e go duela severance kana pension kana gratuity kana go?
So pension is easy enough because I go sign the form or pension is at some organization.
Yeah.
But gratuity, they have to have it in your employment contract. Gratuity. If you don't have pension, you don't have gratuity, you are entitled to severance in terms of the law. Yes.
Okay.
Right?
Even la go sa mention gore gona le severance.
How le ha go sa mention severance. If they mention a pension or you have a pension, then you don't get a severance unless they say you also get a severance. If they say you have gratuity, you don't get a severance unless they say you also get severance, right? But how did he mention hell or a severance? Right?
Yeah.
And then the question I usually get gratuity gratuity is a gift that is given by the employer to the employee.
Yeah.
So you find there's no calculation in the law. Gratuity. The employer can decide okay, gratuity 2 months. Right? So there's no calculation gratuity.
Yo. Is that something that maybe we can put in the contract for the
yes.
It has to be in the contract.
The gratuity has to be in the contract. Otherwise, the severance.
Yeah, the condition is a gratuity.
Yes, under what circumstances and so on.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this one requires a whiteboard, for us to do that. Because I was about to say, okay, let's do an example and calculate the severance and gratuity. But no, I think this one, people must register for the seminar.
Yes, 26th of April, 2025. And the good thing is it's fully online.
Oh,
right?
Fantastic.
And this is to enable anyone, anywhere in Botswana to attend the seminar.
Okay.
Yes.
The seminar, what exactly is the seminar? What is it?
So effectively, we're going to be talking about employment law.
Okay.
And this time we're expanding it to include the civil service or the public sector.
Oh, yes, which we didn't discuss today.
Yes. And it's not free though.
Okay.
We've made it a reduced amount of 100 pula. Participant.
Fantastic.
Yeah, no. People should think outside the box. Right? ikgobokanyeng le dire nya ke re kgang go gore ke batla gore batho ba nne le information ikgobokanyeng le 5 o a bantsha 20 pula 20 pula 20 pula 20 pula ene le nna go computereng le nngwe hela I ke re lokela go tsa information right rather than one person just wanting to focus on paying 100
bucks by themselves. I remember there's actually a seminar that my wife and I did that I think it was sometime, was it last year?
Carlos Ulankolot.
Yeah, no, that one around. We did that. We just locked in because we both registered individually, right? And then when it's time for the seminar, I was like, no, I'm gonna take it. To a whole, discuss.
You know, so I always say to people, seminar, do the online thing, literating and things of that nature.
Yeah, but Manolo, explain this to me about you, man. Like, how do you, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not a conflict of, but it's this thing of capitalism versus the work that is in your heart, which is teaching the people the law. How do I balance it? How do you balance this?
They're giving people tips on how to attend the seminar at a severe discount.
Oh man, it was one of the things that I was thinking when you told me you have your own firm now, and I was like, man, she needs someone to be there. She needs a strict financial manager in this firm because this is because and you love helping people as far as the law is concerned.
That's why one has a fiance or one fiance ako itse
every day. Oh man. Yo, Botswana Thinking Law podcast. We're gonna wrap it up like that.
Yes.
Thank you so much, B. How do we get a hold of you, man? We want some legal, proper legal services out there. You know,
so Botswana Thinking Law is on all platforms.
Okay.
And re mogala rona mo ileng gore le khona go letsa le romela melaetsa hela yalo gore le bue gore le thoka dithuso tse di ntseng yang. And a lot of times ha batho ba letsa ba re ke na le mathata kana ba romela message ke nna ke ba ra ke re bukang consultation.
Yes.
So that we have the discussion. Itse gore batho bangwe ba gore initial consultation ya rona madi a teng a go godimo. But you know, we put that initial consultation for re bone gore batho ba tsa kgang ya bone ka manonthotho, right? And then when we come and have the initial consultation is when we can discuss. Be like, hey, na tota bonolo go bukete mo dipateng and all those other things. But initial consultation it has to be there to show what you truly want your matter to be dealt with.
And I found that if you pay that initial consultation fee, you might feel, hey, this fee is high or whatever the case is. But if you pay that fee, I found that you get everything. You know, from there, it's easier. It's easier for you to pick up the phone at a later stage and say, hey, but on something, and learn you are able to you know, because okay, cool stuff. So number what do you facing?
Number is 78201425. Yeah, Botswana Thinking Law. And then your fisiki 3932028.
Something like that. But the nice thing about this is you can just write in the comments there. We will respond to you in the comments. We will definitely respond to you in the comments.
Yeah.
It's so funny that you couldn't remember the cell number because Doc, I've tried to memorize the CPM text. I've even given up. Every time I have to fill out forms and I always have to go in my phone and look
check.
For my own business number.
Man,
no, 100%. No, I agree.
I remember I used to know the number. 10, 12.
Not anymore.
Not
anymore.
Yeah.
That's how we wrap up season 2. We'll be back next week with more of this legal talk and conversations. Please like and comment and etc. That's we want to hear your comments. We want to get your feedback. How can we make it better? How can we make it nicer for you?
Yes.
Wrap it up for us there, please.
Oh, we're on Instagram now as well.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, we're trying to target a younger audience.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So, I wonder how it goes.
Yeah.
And thank you for joining me, Carlos, as always.
Thank you, B.
See you next week.
We're back on Monday.
Yeah.
Sharp.